Right, hopefully you can hear me all now. I think that's the microphone sorted now. Should have the microphone sorted, the microphone issue now, that's it sorted, thank God. It's a really fiddly thing here. If you don't remember to set it to the microphone that you're using, and there's like 3 or 4 different microphones that I can use, options. So sometimes if you forget to put in your actual microphone, that will go by a preset one, which obviously doesn't work. But that should be it sorted now. I'm getting the lights going along at the bottom of the screen to signify my microphone's working. So any questions, just ask away. As I was saying, I was ranting on there to myself then, obviously. It was a bit bizarre the last couple of weeks because we've had the On the Buses film screened on the telly about a week and a half ago, just a week last Saturday. It was a little bit bizarre because I really don't understand the mentality of people who were on Facebook going berserk at the editing of the film, which were 2 parts of nudity. Don't people realize, or people never heard of the 9 o'clock watershed, which came in 1964? I mean, come on. I mean, on the Holiday on the Buses film was first screened on telly in 1979. And I'll guarantee you that since 1979, if it's been shown before 9 o'clock, you will not have got any tits or bums being seen in it. Take it from me, that's a fact. So I don't know why people were going so berserk about it on Facebook a week or so ago. It really is quite bizarre, really. I mean, I even was on one Facebook group, and one person before it started said if they cut the tits out, I'm not watching it. I mean, that is truly bizarre. It really is. I mean, come on. If that's all that he's watching it for, he's certainly not an On the Buses fan. That's all I can say. But the way that I see it, with the films being screened on telly, if you want, just post up any questions that you've got while I'm ranting here. It'll give you time to think of any questions to do On the Buses. Just post them up and I'll answer them when I see them on the screen. So yeah, the benefit of having the films repeated every so often on the telly, no matter how much they're edited, and the only bits that are really edited out are the bits with the nudity anyway. People try and make out that it's been cut to ribbons, which is a load of nonsense, really. It's an exaggeration of things. But the amount of fans that you get that watch On the Buses now, well, have become fans of On the Buses, have become fans On the Buses through watching the repeats. So it's thanks to the repeats being shown on the telly and the films as well being shown on the telly that you get so many, what do you call it? That you get so many fans today. Nicholas, I would imagine it would have been something to do with his health, basically. Around that time was around the time that obviously he only done half of Series 7, so obviously he was having health issues around then, and I would imagine that's why he never done it. That's what my guess would be anyway. Wouldn't say that it would be any other reason other than that, if you see what I mean. So if you've got any questions like Nicholas there, just post them up on the screen and I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen there. So yeah, I mean, it's really quite bizarre and bewildering that you get so many people getting their knickers in a knot about edits for maybe they're cutting out about 3 seconds of the film. And it's all content that has never been shown before 9 o'clock anyway. So they're getting their knickers in a knot about something that's always been the case. I would imagine that the only time that you'll get Holiday on the Buses shown in its entirety is if it's shown at something like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, or 12 o'clock at night, because that's the only time that they'll be able to really show it in its entirety. It's after the 9 o'clock watershed. People say as well, why don't they show it at 9 o'clock? They're not going to show it at 9 o'clock or Holiday on the Buses, because that is a prime time slot for new films. That's okay, Nicholas. For new films, for more up-to-date films, they're not going to put on a film that's 40 years old at 9 o'clock at night in a prime time slot. There's no way they're going to screen Holiday on the Buses at that time. So it either gets screened in the morning with the edits, or it gets screened at a time like 1 o'clock in the morning when nobody can watch it, when nobody's up to watch it. So it's much better that it gets screened in the morning. I mean, these people that are complaining about the edits anyway, I mean, if they're all fans, surely to high heaven, they're all going to have their own DVD box sets that they can watch for their 3 seconds of cheap thrills of a pair of tits and a bum, if you know what I mean. It's quite sort of like embarrassing, the sort of rigmarole that was made up about it. And obviously, Anna didn't like the idea of showing off a bare bum either, because that's why she refused to do the part. And it was Standon's backside that you see in the pool anyway. So there you go. I mean, to me, I'm not a prude, but to me, it's sort of like it was the Carry On films went the same way. As soon as the Carry On films started going more on the nudity side, they went down the routes of the confessions and the adventures films, and that was a death knell for them. There's a level of sort of like where you step over the line and where you don't step over the line. You know what I mean? On the Buses didn't do it, apart from Holiday on the Buses, and it's only a sort of like couple of blink and you miss it scenes, but it's still going down that route. The Carry On films were at their best when they didn't go down that route, like through the 1960s and maybe right up until maybe, apart from Carry On Camping, right up to the sort of like early 1970s, and then they started going more on the saucy side, if you see what I mean. But any questions, like Nicholas has posted there, and I'll answer them for you. I hope you're enjoying the videos that I'm posting up with the filming locations as well. I know some people have been asking about me doing a Holiday on the Buses commentary like I've done on the first 2 films. The problem with that is I need to work out a way of how to do it, because YouTube more than likely will take it down if I try like showing the film and me talking over the top of it. Because as soon as they hear the dialogue and the music and all of that, then they take that as a copyright infringement and they'll take the film down. So the only way that I could really see myself doing it is something along the similar lines of the first film that I've done on here, which would be recording our commentary as I'm watching it myself and then putting the recording onto YouTube, and just so that you know, for you to start my recording of the interview at the same time as you're starting watching the DVD on your TV or something like that. That's probably about the only way that I could see myself getting around that copyright issue side of things, which is unfortunate, really. Hi, Cam. You got any questions about On the Buses? Post them up here and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. So it is rather awkward putting up sort of like copyright held material onto Facebook, even if it's not, if it's to offer a service like a commentary with it. It's a difficult thing to do, a difficult way to get around things. I need to think about it and see what I can actually get away with, if you see what I mean. So as I say, any questions about On the Buses, post them up down the side of the screen there. I am hoping to have up on the channel about maybe a couple of weeks' time, maybe about a video for all the Mutiny on the Buses filming locations. And then thereafter that, it will be one of all the Holiday on the Buses video, the filming locations. Yeah, if there's anything you want to know about the films you've often wondered, Cam, then just post them up. Somebody was asking on my Facebook group as well. They wanted to know about. They wanted to know, obviously, because they're seeing pictures of Michael Robbins on the motorbike and are automatically presuming that he rode the motorbike. He didn't. Tony, who is, I think he's Michael's nephew, as a member on our group, and he's stated before that Michael couldn't ride a motorbike, and that's obvious anyway, because if you watch the next location that I put up on my Facebook group, if anyone's here, I'm sure a lot of people here will be members, you'll see, if you watch that scene in Mutiny on the Buses, when the motorbike is about to crash into the back of the bus in the opening credits, you see him riding along on the motorbike. If you play that frame by frame, as the motorbike gets closer and closer, you can see that Michael Robbins miraculously transforms into Tex Fuller. Tex Fuller was an actor who played Harry in the film, but he was also a stuntman. So Tex Fuller rode the motorbike from long range distances. But when you see the motorbike up close, really close, that's Michael Robbins, but the motorbike's getting towed, if you see what I mean. So don't think that Michael Robbins was riding the motorbike around like Evel Knievel or anything like that, because that wasn't the case. Michael can ride the motorbike. You only got told on the close-up scenes, the far-out scenes, that was Tex Fuller who was riding it. So same when you see later on in the film, you see Olive riding the motorbike to the bus depot. That you can see as well as Tex Fuller. When you look at, if you look closely at the face, you can see it isn't Anna Karen. You can see it is Tex Fuller, and the build as well is different from Anna Karen's, obviously. So that's how you can tell the difference there as well. There are one or two scenes as well when you see the motorbike far away. You can see where Tex Fuller's on the bike and Michael, and because he's the height difference that is between Tex and Michael Robbins as well, as another bit of a clue as well. Because Tex was a little bit shorter than Michael Robbins was. So you know what to do. Just any questions that you've got, if you're sitting there watching and you'd like to ask any questions about on the buses, post them up and I'll answer them for you. And someone posted up a video on the Facebook group. It's one that, like a little mini documentary about the making of the films, which is a good watch. When you hear Roy Skaggs talking a bit, and Reg and Stephen and all of that. It must have been done quite some time ago, maybe around about the turn of the millennium, maybe around about 2000, 2001, something like that, I would guess. They maybe done that. So it would be about maybe 19, 20 years ago. But there, if you listen carefully, you can see Reg there. He does say that he drove the bus onto the locations, which is true enough. He took it with all the cabin equipment and all of that and stuff like that, and the lighting equipment to the various locations and things like that. Because obviously he did have a PSV license, but he was uninsured, if you see what I mean. I would say the more chance you had of him doing more bus driving was in the films prior to rather than the TV series, because the films, the buses that they used for the films had went out of service. They were actually owned by a private owner by that time. So obviously Eastern National didn't have any say in the matter then, if you see what I mean. It was a private owner who owned them, so they might have been a little bit more flexible with how much driving could be done with the bus. They had, I think, the Bristol KSWs were the buses that they used in the films, slightly older models than the Bristol Ludecas. They had went out of service by January 1971, and they started filming the films in 1971. Yeah, actually, I think they started filming the film in March 1971. So a couple of months after it went out of service and were then passed over to a new owner, a private owner, they were then being used in the films, if you see what I mean. Hi, Darren. Henry, how exactly do you find street names you find in the photos? You already know them anyway. You get them, obviously, you know them by the amount of times I visited the streets to photograph them. Obviously, you log them all down. I've got them written down in my books and then writing pads and everything like that. And they're all up on Google Street Maps and things like that. Anyway, Google Street View, for the amount of times that you have to scour around there when you're looking for the locations, if you see what I mean. So that's how you get to know the street names, basically, Henry. Yeah, Darren, how's you? Okay, I hope. So if you've got any more questions, just post them up. But we know from somebody who worked for Crossrail owned the bus that we used on holiday on the buses, and they were adamant they didn't want Reg driving the bus outside of the holiday camp. So you can safely guarantee yourself that Reg wasn't driving the bus out on the country lanes. I know you see one or two shots where he's going along and it looks like he's passing along a country lane and all of that. That could easily have been done with towing, which I do believe one of our one of the extras that was in the film spent time on the bus, and she did say that they towed the bus. So that would have been a lot of that you see when you see the bus going along. You just see Reg sitting there, and you can see it going along with our hedge in the background and all of that. It's not back projection. That is the bus actually moving along the country lane, but it would have been getting towed by maybe a truck or something like that. That's what you've got to understand is with these. That was Mutiny on the Bus's cam when he crashes the bus into the farmyard. The farmyard was only like about perhaps about 2.5 miles, 3 miles to the northeast of the studios. So it was all within our good distance to get to. They never travelled far at all for the filming locations in the films, apart from obviously the safari park, which was down in Windsor. So that would be about maybe a 20-mile journey. And to the southwest, and obviously starting for holiday on the buses. Aside from that, all of the locations were within a good 5-mile radius of the studios. My most prized on the buses possession. Probably a copy of my first book, I would say. Probably this, a copy of my first book. So that was the very first book that I wrote, and it's got a heck of a lot of signatures in it. You look at all the signatures that is in there. Don't know if you can see that, and there's more inside as well. It's got signatures there from the likes of some people are sadly no longer with us that have signed it. Alan Curtis, sadly passed away not long ago. Lonnie Wolfe, Ronnie Chesney, both passed away sadly, and Stuart Allen as well, sadly passed. Deirdre Costello, Roy Skeggs, Kate Williams, Roger Ferris, Pat Gavin, Avril Gaynor, Harry Fielder sadly passed away as well. Cheryl Hall, Phil Campbell, Patricia Clapton, Anna Karen, Sandra Bryant. So you could get the picture there. Nina West, John Lyons, Adam Rhodes, and there's more inside as well. So I'd say that's probably my most prized possession because it was my first book that I ever brought out as well. So I would say it's probably this. So any more? The best theme I've got, I would say Mutiny on the Buses cam. I would say Mutiny on the Buses. They're all good anyway. They're all excellent. If you were putting me on the spot, then I would go for Mutiny on the Buses. I would say. I really like the Holiday on the Buses one as well. It's got a nice feel to it. They're very much like the Carry On films, where they've all got soundtracks that get you in the mood for the film, which really works really well. It blends into the film very well. They're all very catchy. Darren, there's 4 buses that are still kicking around that were used and on the buses. One's in the south of France somewhere, Lille or something like that. I think that may. There's another one that's preserved in this country. I think it's somewhere like around Derbyshire or something like that, where it's privately owned in Derbyshire. That might be the one from the film. which is the license plate. I'll have it in my other book here. I'll just bring it the license plate for you. I'll just get it for you. That is definitely still aligned because there's photographs up on. You can find the photographs up online on the internet. Not sure. I think it's 857 VNO 857. That might be that's still going around. I know that is still in circulation, and they bus them on the buses. There's certainly in thingy because that was down at the London Transport Museum and my book launch down there in 2009. Sorry. So that's still around. I know that much. So that's your, and I think there's a one out in Santa Monica in California or something like that. So that's the four that are still kicking around, buses that are still actually in circulation, if you see what I mean. Favorite episode, I'd probably say my favorite episode is Do It Yourself, I would say. I just love it's got a lot of funny scenes in it. The breathalyzer scene, for one, and the family at the end all totally drunk. And Stan coming into the depot drunk and all of that, and I'm trying to sober them up with the mashed potatoes and then the whole breathalyzer scene. So it's got so much of the rich vein of where it's really funny throughout. So if I was pushed, I would say that. But there are a lot of very good, very strong episodes and Series 3, one or two in Series 2 as well. I really love, like the used combination, and Ant Mod's very good as well. So anybody with any questions, just keep them coming in and I'll answer them for you. I'll be here online until about, if it remains busy enough, we'll be on until about 8:30 for anyone that's interested. Yeah, all episodes still exist. There was 74 episodes and there was 7 series. The two black and white series are the first and the second. Some of the episodes in series 4 revert back to black and white from colour, but that's because there was a colour technicians strike around that time in late 1970, early 71. They may do eventually, but I mean, you've got it repeated on ITV anyway about it appearing on BritBox and all of that anyway. So I wouldn't really worry about that just now. I've got them all on my DVDs as well. So would you really watch them as well if they were on BritBox? If they're getting repeated on the telly and they're getting they may put it on there eventually, maybe when they've finished, when they feel that they're not going to repeat it for a long time again. That's when they might put it onto BritBox. I don't know what you mean by subbed to you, Cam. I don't know what subbed is. Hope it's a good thing. But any questions, just ask away and I'll answer them for you. Just keep them coming in, those questions. So as I say, with the holiday on the buses commentary, it's a very difficult thing to do. I need to think about ways of getting around the copyright issues that I'll have on putting it onto Facebook. I mean, not on Facebook, onto YouTube, sorry. Because if you put it up with the film in its entirety, it's guaranteed to be taken off. I did try once before and it got taken off because of copyright issues. Because obviously it picks up on the theme music and all of that, and it takes it off straight away going by that. So and the sort of like the script as well. So I'd need to think twice about how I'm going to put it back up if I do a holiday on the buses one. Box set. Yeah, there's a box set out for the films. Yeah, definitely. The thing is, there I don't see that ITV do cut them up and butcher them as much as what it's said to be. The episodes, certainly not. The films, the only things I've seen cut out of the holiday out of the films is in Holiday on the Buses, when you see obviously a naked pair of tits for 2 seconds and Stand-in's bum in the swimming pool for a second. So I mean, it's like blink and you miss it moment. So is it worth getting your knickers in a knot about that? As I said before at the beginning when I was having my rant there, I don't know if you heard that or not. Basically, the way that I see it is the the 9 o'clock watershed has been there since the year dot. It's been there since 1964. So the Carry On films were only in their infancy then when the watershed came in. Now, if any channel shows any bits of nudity or anything like that before 9 o'clock, they get fined £60,000 for it. So you can understand why ITV are cutting them out, cutting bits like that out of them. So I mean, you can fully understand that. I don't see an issue with it because it's bringing new fans to Carry On fans to the films and bringing new On the Buses fans to the films. We all know what they're like. We've seen them all. We've seen them all in their entirety, and we've got the DVDs and all of that where you can watch them all in their entirety anyway. But do you think new fans that are coming in and they sit there and watch a Carry On or an On the Buses film for the first time are going to say, "Oh, I'm sure there was a bum cut out of that. Oh, I'm sure there was a pair of tits cut out." No, of course not. They're going to enjoy it for the comedy and the scripts and the acting and all of that. And that's some hook, that's some fans. I mean, they're going to be the lifeblood and the carrying on of the baton, if you will, of the next generation of fans. So it's important that the TV series and the films and the Carry On films carry on getting aired so that a whole new generation of fans are able to see them. Yeah, it was. I mean, what you got to remember is the bike when the TV series was our BSA M21. I think it was like about 1939 or something like that. So it was already about 30 years old when it came on to do On the Buses, if you see what I mean. So it was an age then, if you see what I mean. The other, because he used two bikes. The second bike was also our BSA, but that was our W35 Blue Star. I think it was. It was a slightly different model. I think that was the one that used for the Holiday on the Buses. And that was from around about the same time period, sort of like Second World War age, sort of like. So that would have been again around about 30 years old when they used that for the film. So yeah, they were really as old as what they look. Obviously, they would have been roadworthy. Obviously, needed to be able to use them on the show. Obviously, but they would have been sort of like not in the best of condition. Obviously. But that would have been probably intentional anyway. Yep, cheers for popping in, Cam. So anyone with any questions, you know what to do, pop them up and pop them on and ask away. Anything to do with On the Buses, or you can ask about the filming locations, you can ask about um, uh, the events are organised, the On the Buses events down in Boreham Woods. Obviously, they're all on the hold at the moment because of the coronavirus situation. Also, the walking tours are organised. So if you've got any questions, just post them up and ask away. Anything to do with those sorts of things, the events organised or the walking tours organised, or anything to do with my books, anything to do with on the buses in general, or the filming locations, production side of things, anything like that, just ask away and I'll answer. Yeah, it is an important thing to think about, though, for people that complain about don't understand that the clock might still. Can you explain what you mean by that? Why do you think 5? Well, I missed a part of your message there. Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that last post there. But any questions, you just keep them coming in, like, and I'll answer them as soon as I see them. I know another question that often, well, it comes up now and again. People say, like, was it a full film? No, not every location has it. No, that's why someone was asking earlier on. They said on one of my posts on one of my videos, is what clue Jakey Beer? Jakey Bear, sorry, I don't see what you're asking there. So the location hasn't been found. As I was saying to one of the posters earlier on, who posted up on one of my videos, he posted up and asked if I could do Love Thy Neighbour or Bless His House. It's like I say, I mean, I'm still working on the buses locations. I need to sort of, like, it needs to be something that I can give full 100% attention to. Otherwise, you're doing only doing half a job on something, if you see what I mean. It's got to be a full commitment to something, like finding locations and all of that. And the on the buses ones aren't even sort of like finished yet. There's probably maybe around about there's a lot from the episodes. A lot from the episodes on the make when the bike crashes in the countryside. That's our rural location that I haven't been able to pinpoint yet. There's probably about 5, 6 locations in that straight away. There's maybe about a couple, 2 or 3 from on the buses as well that haven't been found. So straight away, there you go. You've got like maybe about 10 there. So I would say there's something maybe around about 20 or something like that haven't been pinpointed for sure. They may never get pinpointed, but I'd like to carry on looking to make sure I find as many as possible. But it's definitely what I've got hold of myself. I can put my hand on my heart and say with a degree of certainty that I own the biggest database of film locations in the world, because once this coronavirus situation's over with, I've got like about another 100 locations to go and visit and photograph. Maybe 100 to 150, which would take the final the count of known ones then up to around about 500, and that's from the TV series and films, which you won't find anywhere else in the world that's got a bigger database than that. Obviously, LWT will have in records somewhere all of the locations, but they won't obviously have any of the films. And likewise for Hammer, they'll have all the films, but they won't have any of the television series, if you see what I mean. Like to answer your question there. Why do you think that 5 decades plus since the series was first released? Well, it's thankful that it gets repeated anyway, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's a good question though, but I think it's just we are a bit in a sort of like an age now at the moment where we're sort of like very much restricted on what we can laugh at. It's a very restricted time. So on the buses, carry-on films are probably refreshing to a lot of people today who are told what they can and can't laugh at. Here they're getting a chance of some different sort of stuff that they can laugh at, if you see what I mean. And that's why a lot of people maybe take to them, if you see what I mean. Got a great cast as well. The cast are all superb in their roles that they've got, very well cast indeed. Great acting as well. And the scripts are really good as well. Well, obviously, the scripts I think tailed off a bit in the sort of like the Serious 7, obviously, when you never had Michael Robbins or Reg Varney to sort of like call on, if you see what I mean. It's quite possible, Jakey. Don't quote me on that, because obviously Reg was born and brought up in Camden Town. Stephen was born and brought up in Poplar, which is just right next to it. It's a neighbouring neighbourhood, so it's quite possible. I couldn't tell you that for 100% sure, but it wouldn't surprise me, if you see what I mean. Wouldn't have been at the same time, obviously, because Reg was a good deal older than what Stephen was. Even though it might not look like that, the way that they done it with makeup and all of that, and on the buses. Cheers, Nicholas. Yeah, I'll keep looking. Yeah, back to your question though, Cockmeister. Yeah, I would say it's probably down to those sorts of things. The subject material, it's sort of like different from the comedies that are around at the moment, which is very sort of like PC, whereas that's non-PC sort of humour. So people today maybe find it a little bit of a release, if you see what a relief to have something and a release to be able to sort of like have a little bit wider spectrum for what they can and can't laugh at, if you see what I'm saying there. Obviously, it won't sit easy with a lot of people for the sexist side of things, where I'm two men chasing after clippies and all of that. You know, nowadays that's very much frowned on, but I think basically the script for the scripts are very good, I find anyway. The cast that there is as well. All of that helps to keep where it is, if you see what I mean. And the repeats help as well, obviously. People can just, there might be kids watching it today, or even sort of like people in their teens who weren't born when it was first shown on telly and might have looked at it and said, oh yeah, it's quite good, this is. Might be laid low because of the COVID and all of that sort of thing, and they've got nothing else to do, so they'll switch on the telly and they stumble across it, and then they get hooked on it, basically. So that's the benefit of having them repeated, even if they've got 1 second edited out here and 2 seconds edited out there. It's bringing a whole new generation of fans to the show, if you see what I mean. No, Reg was from Camden Town, Jakey Bear, and or was it Canning Town? Sorry, Canning Town, which is like next door to Poplar. So I wouldn't rule it out, because I'm right in this sort of like neighbouring, like next to one another. You know what I mean? And if you look on the map, you'll see you've got Canning Town there as an area. Poplar's like next to it. So I wouldn't rule it out. It's not out of the question, but they certainly wouldn't have been it at the same time, because Reg was about nearly 20 years older than what Stephen was. So just keep your questions coming in. Any questions you want to know about on the buses? It was quite interesting if you watch today's episodes. The second one was the inspector's niece, and right at the end they're talking about they'll stay in and watch Manhunt on the telly, and everyone was sort of like drooling over it and saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's good, that is," which is quite funny, really, because you could see really it was LWT promoting their own series, because Manhunt had only started on the buses. The third series, this is where they started with repeats. They started them on Friday, I think, with the start of series 3. Now, the first episode of series 3 was shown on the 2nd of January 1970. And on that same night, would you believe, the very first episode of Manhunt was shown. So it's funny listening to all the family sort of like drooling over it, like when it would have been a really new show, if you see what I mean. So it was obviously, I think, LWT trying to self-promote one of their series, if you see what I mean. So the night that they were mentioning it, the inspector's niece, that was the 3rd episode of Serious 3 of On the Buses. So that would, on that same night was being screened, was the 1st episode of Manhunt, if you see what I mean. So it's quite sort of like obvious that they were trying to promote it being a new series, trying to say, oh, we'll say that it's good, or can you put it in the script to Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney about it? And that's what they did, really. Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, it's a bit sad, really, in a way, because to me, as I see it, the Cockmeister, the way that I see it is, back in the day in the 1970s, all right, there might have been a lot of gross comedies as well, but there was a wider spectrum of comedies. You could have non-PC humour, you could have your more straight-laced sort of like sitcoms that BBC tended to prefer to do. You had your earthy type humour. You had your sort of like your they had your sort of like your comedy double acts, like the two Ronnies, Morecambe and Wise. It's funny as well. I mean, I'm on the get people now and again post up your TV schedules from say 20, 30, 40 years ago, and really it's the difference in the quality between then and now is it's quite amazing, really. I mean, if you look at TV schedules now compared to 30, maybe even 20, 30 years ago, it's sort of night and day, basically. Back then in the day, you had variety. Your evening entertainment would start off with maybe a quiz show, you'd then have a sitcom, you'd then maybe have a cop drama, and then you'd maybe have the news, and you'd end up with a film. Nowadays, it's like you've got a cooking show, then another cooking show, a virtual reality show, the news, and then a cheap, tacky, maybe some sort of show. No variety and no sort of like thought for the viewers, if you see what I mean. Cheap and tacky, I would say. And it's quite sort of like funny, really, because you'd think back now that we've got like all these hundreds of channels with Sky and everything, all the other types of streaming and things like that. But your basic TV channels, what they offer you has gone right down the tubes in terms of entertainment value compared to 30, 40 years ago, where you had good, hard variety of programming, if you know what I mean. You had quiz shows, you had documentary, you had a hard-hitting drama, you had a sitcom, you had it all in one night's viewing. Whereas you don't now. I mean, it's quite sort of sad the way that things have gone with it. I mean, I hardly watch the terrestrial telly now, to tell the truth. Yeah, definitely, Nicholas. I noticed that today because I just thought, I wonder when this manhunt started, and it started on the same night that the first episode of Series 3 of On the Buses had started. So keep your questions coming in. You got any more questions? Post them up. I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Anybody's got any suggestions as well, they can post them up about how to get around this copyright issues of doing a holiday on the buses, if you see what I mean, as a commentary. As I said, I've tried putting it up with me talking over the top of it, and I downloaded it onto YouTube and it got knocked back for copyright issues. So I wouldn't want to go to all that trouble of doing it again and then get knocked back again for that, if you see what I mean. So obviously the background noise has to go, which is sort of like the whole of the script of them talking and the music in the background and all of that, because that's what they obviously pick up on YouTube, and they won't accept it for infringing copyright, if you see what I mean. So it might be a case of where I may one day try downloading just myself with the commentary, and then ask you at the very start to switch on the film, and then obviously you can watch the film on your TV and then listen to my commentary at the same time, sort of thing. Don't know if that was something that would go down well with people or not. So you know what to do. Keep your questions coming in. I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them. Anything to do with on the buses, the cast, the crew, production side of things, the filming locations, my books, the filming locations, anything like that, or the events are organised, the walking tours are organised. Yeah, it's sort of like in terms of your comedy output, if you see what I mean. Especially, I mean, if you were to ask me to sort of like go through my favourite comedies of the 60s and 70s, hi Harvey, I could probably do maybe around about roll off about 20 ones that we say I really loved, and then you go into the 80s, you're maybe pulling it down to maybe about 10. Go into the 90s, I've maybe only come up with about 5. Anything after that, you're maybe only talking Still Game and maybe Good Night Sweetheart for me, and then that's it. So it's sort of like the graph goes like that down the way in terms of like quality sitcoms. I'm not on Daily Motion, but that's an idea that I might look into. I know because I'm a fan of sort of like I've got a little bit hooked recently watching these people. A lot of them are Americans who are watching sort of like a reaction, watching comedies like comedies like your Still Game and things like that, and you can sit and watch it with an American and seeing them laughing at them. He runs them through Daily Motion. I know he does that for some Porridge ones. That's what I watch with him. Watch Porridge episodes, which are total classic. And he runs them off of Daily Motion, obviously to avoid maybe getting cut, and then he provides a link, I think it is, onto his YouTube page. So that's maybe an option. Copmeister, cheers for that. Might look into that. I've never heard of BitChute before though, but I've heard of Daily Motion. So that could be an option as well. I'll look into that. Cheers. No, the mutiny wasn't even on Mutiny on the Buses. I don't know what you're thinking about, Harvey. Not on the buses, the Cockmeister. It was they only filmed in the Boreham Wood area for the films. So now it was only North Wales that they filmed in for Holiday on the Buses, and around Boreham Wood for the films for the TV series. It wasn't Boreham Wood. What you've got to remember is the Cockmeister, how it worked was on the buses ran for 7 series. First 6 series, LWT were working out of the studios in Wembley. So all of your series 1 to 6 were all tended to be North London locations, primarily where Wood Green around the depot and Lordship Lane, Eastern National, Wembley, some on Muswell Hill, Hendon, and Enfield, areas like that, if you see what I'm saying there. And then Series 7, by that time, LWT had moved down to the South Bank Studios, which is in South London. So then all the locations for Series 7 were all in the south of London, which is areas like Peckham, Camberwell, South Bank, Kensington, that sort of thing. The films were Boreham Woods, so they were primarily, Elstree Studios were primarily in Boreham Woods, surrounding areas such as small towns like Shenley, St Albans. They did do the go down to Chiswick for the skid pan scene, and the bookmakers scene from Holiday on the Buses was in Edgware, but that was still only like about 3 or 4 miles from Elstree Studios, actually. So yeah, they only sort of like stuck to set areas. The reason behind that was obviously Barneswell Boy, the Pontons had opened up their new holiday camp in 1971 at Prestatyn, so they saw that as a great way of promoting it, to allow them to come up there and film. Obviously, they were looking around for a holiday camp, so it was sort of like one was doing the other one. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. You see what I mean? It was a great advertising ploy for the holiday camp straight away. So they dived at the chance for filming up at the holiday camp with probably no cost, because they were getting like free advertising, and that's why you see Mutiny on the Buses. You see Pontons on the side of the bus. So they probably already knew by the time that they were doing Mutiny on the Buses that they were already having mind Holiday on the Buses. Harvey, yeah, it will be intact, but you're not going to get the film intact. Harvey, do you know what the watershed is? You don't get anything of tits and bums before 9 o'clock at night. You never have done. Holiday on the Buses was first shown on the telly in 1979. And I can guarantee you that since 1979, the many, many, many times it's been shown on telly, you've never seen the tits and the bums before 9 o'clock. Ofcom have got a system, any nudity at all, before 9 o'clock on TV shows and films, and that TV company will get fined £60,000 for it. So they're certainly not going to run the risk of that. That's the reason why it's the way that it is, if you see what I mean. They didn't have the, that's the watershed. The watershed came out in 1964. I was a bit surprised it came back out that long ago, actually, when I looked into it. It was 1964, would you believe? Paul, what you saying there? Friends in high places, when Blakey was listening up there. Yeah, it was a real bang. Obviously, I think that would have been done, Paul, as actors had their own little system, well, that was a renowned one in the trade, where you're supposed to put your foot in the corner of the door, so that when the door gets slammed shut like that, it hits the foot and not the head. But obviously, Stephen didn't quite time it well enough, or didn't do it correctly, because the door impacted right onto his head. Somebody who said that they had to stop filming, who were present there, and they said he needed to go away and have a concussion test. That's why when you see him later on, he has actually got a plaster on his forehead, doesn't he, or something like that. So yeah, it was real. Yeah, cheers. Glad you enjoyed them being as well. Yeah, Pat Ashton, she passed away sadly. Oh, it wasn't that long ago. Maybe 5, 10 years ago. Pat Ashton passed away. It was never the only place that reported it, I do believe, was something like the Daily Mail, and the only reason that they reported it was because her son actually worked for the Daily Mail. So that's the only newspaper that reported it. Apart from that, it went totally unreported, because obviously she had been off the scene in terms of acting for a good long time. Obviously, I mean, the thing is, with a lot of actresses in the business, they get married, especially around about the 70s, 80s. They have start a family, and then they obviously, to start a family, they give up acting full time to bring up the kid full time. And then once they look to get back into it, the industry's changed, their connections have all gone. It's very much harder to get back into the industry. That's what happened with Sandra Bryant as well, obviously, from On the Buses. But Pat Ashton was in The Gaffer. Now, Bill Maynard, who I spoke to a few times just shortly before he passed away, I was sort of like on the way towards helping him with a book, but that's sort of like obviously fallen by the wayside now. We did have a good chat with Bill, and Bill said that Pat Ashton was his best mistake he ever made in the business, because when they were doing the casting for The Gaffer, and they were doing stage screen tests and all of that, the producer came to Bill and said, which one of those two would you think would be your best for your secretary? And he meant the other woman, but he got the names mixed up, and he said Pat Ashton. So Pat Ashton actually got the part, even though Bill was suggesting the other woman that had went for the part. But as it turned out, he said, she was absolutely brilliant, and it was the best mistake he ever made in the business, was getting her names mixed up, he said, because she was brilliant in the part. So that's a little bit about Pat. Hope you enjoyed that, Harvey. Yeah, they funded yourself through on that. And that was going to be back on the buses. It was going to be taken on by the STV. At STV at the time, as an executive producer, was a man called Brian Izzard. Brian Izzard had produced Holiday on the Buses and Series 7 of On the Buses as well. So obviously Ronnie Wolf, Ronnie Chesney knew him quite well. So they went to STV. But as it turned out, the funding fell through on it. I think Brian frittered the money away on other stuff, and there wasn't enough to actually put On the Buses into production, so it fell by the wayside. No doubt they did try again and hope that the funding would come for it. But by that time, obviously, I would say that Michael was in the stage of fighting cancer pretty soon after that. Because he obviously did pass late, and I think it was 1992, I think it was, with cancer. So he must have been fighting it for maybe a good long time as well. So that would have been another real stumbling block for it around that time as well, I suppose. I wouldn't say that they gave up on it straight away. The funding obviously fell through. They maybe hoped that more money could be raised and put into it the following year, but it just never came to pass. Okay, so keep your questions coming in. You got any more questions? I think the only reason I would have liked to have seen it get made Benswell by is it might have helped Bob. But to me, I think they left it a few years too long. If it had been maybe the late 70s, it would have had a far better chance of coming up, being pulled off. Because the thing is, by that time, the cast were getting on a bit, so Reg wouldn't have been sort of like doing so much activity in it then as he was in the series. The same with Bob, really, is, I suppose. A lot more onus would have been put on to the younger cast that they were bringing in now. To me, that's a dangerous area to get into when you start integrating children or new actors into your cast and hoping that it's going to come off all right. If you look at Only Fools and Horses, for example, I mean, Damien killed that, if you see what I mean. He was useless. The same with the kid that's in Green Grass, Boyce's kid. I'm not sure what his name is again, but he's just not funny either. And that's a dangerous area you go in when you start integrating kids into sort of like comedies where they weren't there before. So that would be another reason that I've been dubious about making it as a success. I would have liked to have seen it being made purely for that might have helped Bob out and might have helped they get the work flowing in for them again. Any of the casket Cicely was made a dame, I know that much. She was made a dame in 19. Oh, I'm not sure which one she was made a dame. I think it was 1972 or something like that. Might have been. But I know Dame Cicely Coatnage was made a dame anyway. Michael done a heck of a lot of work for charity. He was a great charity worker. Was Michael Robbins done a heck of a lot for charity, as his wife did as well. And Doris as well. I think that Doris might very well have been made in the OBE. I know that the likes of your Anna Karen was a Queen Water Rat. That was like a charity. Same with Michael Robbins was in that area as well. He was like a water rat as well. He was in the water rats, which is like a charity for actors. If you see what I mean. So there was that areas that they were involved in. If you see what I mean. But Bob never got any OBEs or anything. Neither did Reg. Doris was an MBE, I do believe, and as I say, Cicely was made into a dame. Now they won't, Harvey. I don't see that the enthusiasm is there for the Blu-ray. Myself and my colleague who organise events, we approached Studio Canal. Actually, had a meeting down there around the time that the 50th anniversary on the buses was coming around, and we put it to them about a Blu-ray release. Then we suggested doing a special edition, like with extras and all that in it, but there just wasn't the appetite, and that was like a 50th anniversary. So if they weren't going to do it for that, I don't see that they would do it just for like 3-4 years later, if you see what I mean. I'd like to see it as well, but and I'd also like to see a special edition release of the films with maybe commentaries in there. Anna's still around. I'm sure Anna would, if she was getting paid the right sort of money for it, and other people they could get for it. If you look at Holiday on the Buses, there's Kate still with us, Sandra Blank still with us, Anna's still with us. So that's 3 people straight away they could have for commentaries on Holiday on the Buses. For the first On the Buses film, they could do Brenda Gogan, Anna again. So there are people there. The second film, they could do Sally Douglas, Anna again. So there's definitely leeway there, if you see what I mean, for these commentaries, if you know what I mean. Even I would bumble along and do my commentaries as well. Hopefully that's a plan at some point. Obviously, once we can all start moving around again, and a big part is like obviously social distancing and all that. Once that's removed, then might be a possibility of getting some sort of like a walking tour organised sometime late in the year as another possibility. But obviously, I've got, as I say, there's about, I don't know how many that is. Just look here. I'll just show you this just now. These are all my screen grabs here. You look at all those screen grabs, right? Just fan through them all. They're all screen grabs of locations that I know where they are, but I've got to visit them to photograph them. There's probably around about 100 or something like that there, and there's more to come as well. I'm working my way through each episode now, trying to sort of like eke out as many as I can so that I know how many I've got to visit to photograph and all that, Martin. So there's about 150 of those that we need to get to. That's going to take some time as well because I live up in Edinburgh, so I can maybe only do sort of like when I go down to London, can maybe only get the time to do maybe about 5 a visit if they're all in a small area, if you see what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Janet Mahoney, that's what I mean from Art and Mutant on the Buses. Janet Mahoney would be thingied for that commentary, I would imagine. Caroline Dowdeswell as well was in that, so I think she might be a possible, but she never really had a big part in the film. Yeah, that's like Bainesville Boy. It was, yeah, the biggest success at the box office for Hammer. The second film was a good, big success as well for them as well at the box office. Holiday on the Buses, moderately successful as well, although many fans would say that's their favourite of the 3 films. It was maybe the least successful, although it was still made profit at the box office anyway, if you see what I mean. Yep, Bob had 3 children, Harvey. Probably would have been Nicholas. It was on a shoestring budget that they made those films, if you see what I mean. I'm not sure that that was the sort of thing that Hammer filmed the films in, if you anyway, CinemaScope. Yeah, still got the night trains. I'm on a week's holiday at the moment anyway, so but at the moment I'm probably only down to doing maybe 1, 2 shifts a week at the moment. So it's just a matter of getting those that sorted. Hopefully they'll start. Obviously they'll maybe starting about the end of April. They might start running a more popular, a more sort of like more services, if you see what I mean. Thereafter. It's not everyone's a cup of tea attending events, Harvey. That's the problem that you've got with celebrities. I mean, some shun the limelight. They like to think of they compartmentalize things. Once they finish with their acting career, that's it. It's finished with. Other people will embrace going to sort of like events and things like that. Other things that come down to preventing them from attending, they might not be available. They might be too frail. It might be too far for them to travel. There's a whole load of things that puts they might have running to be to attend. If you see what I mean. Yeah, Bainesville Boy and there was good chemistry there with Doris. I think both of them got on really well together as well on the set as well, Wilfred and Doris. Hi, Limey Sam, yeah. Good to see you here. Well, they do know now anyway. I know that for a fact. They didn't know before, they do now. I mean, because I was down there taking photographs and they come out and asked what I was doing. So obviously he explained that it was in a film and all of that. Plus as well, when we do our locations tours, Rob, who lives down in Borehamwood, he is a resident. He has been a helper at the events. He tends to go down to these locations where the bus is going to be stopping outside just to warn them beforehand, so they would know the significance of the house, if you see what I mean. Nah, the only one for you, if you're talking about Bob's family, would be Kim, his wife. But Kim is too fragile about it still with the way Bob passed away, if you see what I mean. So she's not mentally in a position to attend these sorts of events and be grilled and questioned and all of that, if you see what I mean. So Kim's not really an option at all, really. That'd be the key one to get with the connection with Bob, if you see what I mean. She's still very fragile about speaking about Bob and all of that, even on a one-to-one basis, let alone in a venue with maybe 50 to 100 people there, if you see what I mean. Yeah, like I said before, there's four, what do we call it, buses that are still kicking around that they used in the film's TV series. I think there's, as I said earlier, if you look back and watch the replay of it, you'll see the ones that I mentioned that are still, the four buses have been preserved. One's from the omnibuses, the old antique 1920s bus that does the tours around transport museums up and down the country. It was also used in an episode, I love that, an episode of Upstairs Downstairs. The bus from the films, I think it's the one that's VNO 857, that's preserved up in, I think it might be Derbyshire or something like that. There's one that's preserved and it's over in France, and there's another one that's over in the States somewhere. I think it's Santa Monica in California or something like that. So there are four buses that are still kicking around from the days of from the films and the TV series. Okay, so you've got any questions, just post them up and ask away, and I'll answer them as soon as I see them. Keep your questions coming in. Wouldn't be like that now. We'd have 40 and travels. It wouldn't be named after the tobacco companies now. No chance. It's just a sign of how the times have changed. Nah, they wouldn't do any wardrobe stuff like that coming up on eBay. In terms of, I mean, the thing is, the only things that you get that come out in terms of parts of uniforms or anything like that, or outfits, out of your real blockbuster things like Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz and stuff like that. They're not going to be selling off Reg Varney's hat from Holiday on the Buses on eBay. If they ever got round to selling any of those sorts of stuff, if they're still in storage anywhere, then it would be at some place like our auction. They wouldn't be certainly turning up on eBay. That's a fact. I can tell you that. And the costumes as well would more than likely have ended up back in the wardrobe at LWT, and no doubt the insignia would have been ripped off and new insignia stitched on and used again for maybe a policeman's uniform or something like that in a later LWT production. That's the way that the TV companies worked, if you know what I mean. Don't Drink the Water didn't really work for me. I'm one with my sitcoms. It's got to be one with a good strong body of cast. We have a good strong number of funny cast members. So you're don't drink the what hasn't really got it, if you see what I mean. It's only really got Stephen Lewis and Pat Coombs in it, and you don't really get the chemistry there, if you see what I mean. For me, Derek Griffiths, and I know that, but that's about you're not really, and it's rather than them just solely set and they're like the sort of like the flat at the end and all that, so it doesn't really cut it through for me. It's not the worst sitcom, but it's certainly not anything near or approaching on the buses, if you see what I mean. Not in pantos, I wouldn't have thought. For the reason that you just said, you've answered your own question there. I know that Ronnie Wolf or Ronnie Chesney had like a cine camera partial recording of when they cast in 1987 on on the buses a fresh start. That was a Canadian stage show with Michael Robbins, Doris Sayre, and Anna Karen were in it. There's not much of the footage, maybe about 10, 15 minutes or something like that. I think that might very well still be owned by the family of Ronnie Wolf. Favourite clippy? Maybe for me, maybe Gwendolyn Watts, maybe. Oh yeah, I'm sure she's sort of like surprised, like when she comes to her events at the age of a lot of people. Obviously, she'll know herself that a lot of them that are there weren't even born when it was being made and it was first shown on the telly. If you see what I mean? I wasn't really a fan of Yosma Dia myself. But there you go. I mean, pair of them played a great part in the holiday on the buses. So if you see what I mean, they just fitted in so well into it. If you see what I'm saying. So keep your questions coming in. If you got any more questions, just keep them coming in. I'll answer them as soon as I see them on your screen. Well, definitely for the how the real life bus companies view the series, definitely Eastern National viewed it as a positive. That's why they agreed to allow their buses to be used. If you see what I mean, they saw it as a great publicity stunt, and uh, obviously London Transport were the first port of call when Stuart Allen was looking for use of their fleet of buses and a garage to film at, but London Transport they didn't want anything to do with it because they thought it would portray their busmen and their bus services in a bad light, so they turned it down. Although they quickly they'd done a real climb down on that for the first film when they got to Ronnie Grove and Ronnie Chesney, asking to be involved, and they offered their skid pan as use if they could be involved in the film. That was by that time on the buses was a smash hit, so they obviously realised they had made a big mistake there, if you see what I mean. I don't know what you mean by the click bucket. Why would you just thought it was just a bucket filled with a beer, if you see what I mean? Yeah, there's a lot of casts that have been in Carry On films, 40 and Travels. Anna Callan's been in a couple. If you're talking about the main cast, that is, it's Anna Callan's been in a couple, and that's it for the main cast. But if you're talking about lesser cast, supporting cast members, then there has been a lot that have been in Carry On films as well as on the buses. You had Alan Curtis, you had Norman Mitchell. I think Claire Davenport was in Carry On Emmanuel. You had, let's see now, Peter Madden. You had a heck of a lot anyway. I know that there's a lot more than that. There's to think of. Yeah, Wendy Richard was another. You also had, let's see, Norman Mitchell, you had Anna Karen, you had Gwendolyn Watts was another one. Sally Douglas was another. Alan Curtis. Johnny Briggs was another. I think Henry McGee was in Emmanuel as well, wasn't he? So you had Henry McGee, you had there were quite a few anyway, I just can't think right now, but there was maybe around about 20, I would say, that were actually in carry-ons that were actually in on the buses as well at some point or other. Well, read his book a while ago, Harvey. You see what I mean? Might have to revisit it again and read it. Obviously, it's disappointed it doesn't go through the on the buses time as well. But hey ho, but still a good read though, as I remember it. As I say, it's a while since I've read it. The TV series was not in any way related to the films. And babies are very notoriously difficult things to deal with in filming things, and that would be the reason as well. Especially when you've only got about a 25-minute film span. They wanted to do it in as less takes as possible. When you include babies on the set, you get them crying in opportune times as well. So it's not really an ideal environment, if you see what I mean. But what you've got to remember is don't make the mistake that the films are in any way connected to the TV series, because they aren't. So don't think that there's all continuity errors here and there all over the place and all of that, because it's not like that at all. Just remember that the TV series was owned by LWT. They owned the rights to the Loxton District name and the TV series and its scripts. The what do we call it? The not the scripts, but the Loxton District and the sort of like the whole premise of the TV series. But the films, LWT never wrote anything in about any potential rights to any future films when he signed up the rights to on the buses. That was left sort of covered, so that when Hammer came calling to Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney, the rights fell upon them, and that's why Hammer were involved in it, and LWT never had any say in it whatsoever. I think there was a real hoo-ha at LWT about such an oversight. But that's why the TV series is a different, runs on a different timeline to the films, because obviously when Hammer got the rights to the films, they couldn't obviously use Luxton and District because that was belonged to LWT. They've been sued to high heaven about that. So they had to have the cast working on a whole new bus depot, whole new different timeline as well. So that's how you've got the different storylines that run in the films compared to the TV series. There's one or two good ones there. I like the one with the allowance and the toilets and all that in it. Hot water isn't bad, but you take your sort of like lead stars out of any sitcom, I don't care what it is, and then it'll suffer. On the Bus is just no different in that. And on the Buses, first blow came for me at the end of Series 5. If you're thinking to yourselves, why that far back? Because that is when Ronnie Wolf and Ronnie Chesney left to go to the States to work on the American spin-off Lots of Luck. They also wrote some scripts for their friend who was over there, Marty Feldman at the time. And that was a blow because they were the best writers of scripts on the Buses. So that came at the end of Series 5. And then at the end of Series 6, the other blow was Michael Robbins leaving. Then at the end of Series 7 was halfway through Series 7, was Red Farley leaving. Cheers, Limey. Stay tuned, there'll be another couple coming along soon. But the thing is, they might very well have to get changed soon. Obviously, like I said earlier, once I start going around and visiting all these locations here, once I go and start visiting all these sort of locations here, I'm photographing them. The videos that I've got up now are going to be somewhat obsolete, shall we say. So obviously I would need to bring them out again with the newly taken photographs and the ones that are already up there, but that's for somewhere down the line there, if you see what I mean. Like me. No, there's no footage of Melco or Drug Brothers. It was like that time. If something wasn't going to be made, they got wiped because videotape was like gold dust. In those days, it would just record over it. They use a videotape for stuff that they would be keeping. If you see what I mean. Oh, I could believe it's quite true, Jakey. Yeah. I know that on the set he did like his lagers and his cans of lager and things like that. I know that the runners that worked on the buses said that the first thing that they had to do on the set in the morning was to bring lager in for Bob Todd. So he must have been like his lagers, if you see what I mean. But there was sort of like a little bit of a connection there, between Bob Todd and Reg Varney. Does anyone know what it is? I'll give you a minute to come up with the answer. I'm not too sure. Probably would have ended up under the guise of ITV, Martin. That's what I would imagine. Because by that time, LWT were at the based at South Bank, which then became the London studios, which was like the home to ITV. So we'd imagine it just came under their ownership. I would imagine, or most of it did. Yeah, that's well, yeah, also in Canada. There are quite a big, still a big fan club of on the buses over in Canada. Been a couple of occasions where we've had a family from Canada come over for a holiday on the buses event. So that's some distance to travel there. It shows how much of the fans of the show that they were. If you see what I mean. I mean, it was sold to 60, I think it was 66 countries or something like that around the world on the buses. So it was huge in Australia as well. Obviously, there's a lot of expats out there. Obviously, took to it as well. Places like New Zealand, places like that as well, and South Africa. It was very popular as well in the low countries in Europe, like Belgium, Germany, Holland, and also in like Scandinavia. I think it was quite popular. So it is, and India as well. It was popular, fairly popular as well. So you're talking about a big corners, all corners of the world, really. It went out to and had good followings in them. So has anyone got that connection between Bob Todd and Reg Varney yet? If you haven't, I'll let you know in 30 seconds. I'll give you another 30 seconds to answer it. See if you can get it. The connection between Bob Todd and Reg Varney, they have something in common. I think they were dubbed Limey. That's what they done back in the day then. Okay, I'll give you what that connection is between Bob Todd and Reg Varney. They both played straight men to Benny Hill. So obviously Bob Todd was on the Benny Hill show, played sort of like straight man there, and a lot of the roles to Benny Hill in the early 1970s. Reg Varney was straight man to Benny Hill in the late 1940s when they left from the army, and they had a little act together going in the late 40s, early 50s before they split up. So that's what the connection is there. They were both straight men to Benny Hill. So keep your questions coming in. Like as I said about the TV series and all of that, it's like they similar in many ways to the Carry On films, very British type humour, non-PC humour that was very popular for a good 20 odd years, and that's why it's sort of like sticks around and it's still there and popular to this day, thanks to the repeats that we get on the telly and all of that, and the films. It keeps it sort of like prominent in people's minds as well. So that's where I would say why it's still popular to this day, if you see what I mean. Obviously, the great cast and the scripts and all of that, and it was very. If you ask busmen of that time, they will tell you that it was very realistic to what it was like working on the buses back then. So it wasn't just a shot in the dark. They actually done good research into it and doing it, because the likes of Reg and Bob and Stephen went down to the bus depots and they mingled with the bus crews, got to know what was going on and everything like that. So it was very well researched. Indeed, and of course, Bob had past experience because he used to be a bus driver himself for Southdown buses to pay his radar fees in the 1950s. He said he only stuck around 2 days. I think he smashed up a bus or something, and that was it. He was moved on from there. And Reg obviously had a PSV license, so they all sort of like had taste for it, if you see what I mean. Yeah, that's I posted that up on my Facebook page the other day about that. Well, it was on another post on another Facebook page that the roads got closed down because there was so many thousands of people lining the route. As I say, that's the enduring appeal, Harvey, like I said, because it's sort of like there's a thing for non-PC humour, even more so now when it's so frowned upon, but it's something that's stretched back from like the early to mid 1960s, with the Carry On films through up until about the early 1980s, if you see what I mean. So you've got like a long sort of like stretch of where it was a very popular and type thing, if you know what I mean. Nowadays, it's sort of like frowned upon, but there is obviously a market out there for it, but they can't make new stuff. But the old stuff picks up the fans because of it, if you know what I mean. You look back like 15 years, you may remember that there was a series called Life on Mars, which had very non-PC humour in it. Very non-PC humour, but I was able to get away with it because it was supposed to be set back in 1973, and that was a huge hit, which shows that there is a market for that sort of humour. But obviously, it's hard to do in the it's hard to do unless you're setting something back way back in the past. And no bloopers actually exist from the series or films. Well, that is not strictly speaking true, because a lot of the bloopers actually you see them on the episodes themselves. Like they stumble over the lines, like today's one. Mum says after like Red had been using Stan had been using the cutlery to clean his nails and his trousers, and then Arthur comes in, and then Mum turns on and said, "Oh, don't eat that fork with that fork." So that was a blooper. There's bloopers that are in there that you can see. Like there's the one where he's playing around with the little remote control bus, and if you watch closely, you see the handle of the remote control flying off, but it stayed in anyway. So bloopers do exist, but there's not ones that have been saved that didn't make it onto film and it's been cut out, and then they've still got them somewhere. They would have all been trashed without a shadow of a doubt. Now, the skid pan closed in the early 1980s, and it was demolished in 1987, the skid pan in Chiswick. It's now a business park that stands there now, Chiswick Business Park. Yeah, it was ideally suited because obviously Bourne Wood was like close, well, it was where the studios were, and the streets, you would almost have mistaken that for being a street somewhere in London because of the look of it. It just looked like a high street in London somewhere, but it wasn't. So keep your questions coming in. It was a hard one to get a photograph of for that, really, because when you're taking a photograph for the filming location, you want some sort of point of reference so you can say, prove definitively that that's where it was. So obviously, once all your buildings have gone on the surrounding area, the only way that you can really do that, hi Paul, is by looking for something on the horizon, which thankfully there is a house on a corner of a road, and across on the other side of the road there's a side-on block of flats, which can still make out today. And then that's a photograph that I have to take from the very front end of the business park, which was a skid pan. So it wouldn't exactly have been in the correct spot for where the bus was doing its skidding, but at least it did give you that reference of those buildings in the background, so it's identifiable as the location, if you see what I mean. So if anyone's got any questions, keep them coming in. I'll be here until about 8:30, so about 40 minutes to go. Just keep your questions coming in and I'll answer them for you. I heard somewhere, Gerald, that Stephen Lewis got the most fan mail. Might be wrong there, but that's what I heard from somewhere in the back of my head is telling me that. I don't know if it was one of the other cast members that I've spoken to, whether it was Anna told me that or someone else, or whether it was Ronnie Ruth, Ronnie Chesney. I've got a feeling that it was Stephen Lewis, but don't quote me on that. That was Tara Lynn. Yeah, Tara Lynn was credited. She's credited at the start. At the end, you'll see her as Tara Lynn. It's quite bizarre, really, because a woman that was in it for had more lines and was in it for longer was the lady in at the end, which was Annette Long, who was the smaller girl who went out on the Moonlight Mystery tour. But she wasn't credited in the film because she never had an equity card. She was actually a Pontins entertainer, a singer at Pontins at the time, who they asked her to play the part, which she did, but they couldn't credit her because she never had an equity card, and all of the whole of the acting union would have been up in arms if somebody was getting onto the credits who wasn't part of the union, if you see what I mean. So her name actually doesn't appear in the credits, even though she had played a bigger part than Tara Lynn did at the very start of the film. Yeah, that day will come, Paul. It's just a matter of when, if you see what I mean. Um, Obviously, it won't be any time this year. What with times of things like social distancing and all of that, it's very unlikely to be anything like that this year. It might be doable maybe towards the end, but not in an event wise. Harvey, if that's what you're talking about, the Annette Long is still with us. Yeah, still with us. She attended a couple of the On the Buses Cast Union events. One in 2017, one in 2019. The child actor that played Oliver North, he was at the 2019 event. That's Adam Rhodes. He is now an airline pilot, and he attended the 2019 event at Pontins. The best thing that I can say for you in terms of if you're interested in any sort of an event, there is a Facebook group. It's called the Holiday on the Buses, the official Holiday on the Buses Cast New Union event, which is what you want to look out for, which is a event group that sort of like organises these events. I'm like a co-organizer of those events and do the locations tours and comparing and all of that, if you see what I mean. So if you're on Facebook, nip along to that group. I don't have absolutely nothing at all to do with. There's another group on Facebook. It's the official On the Buses fan club. Don't ask me to have anything to do with that. Okay, I've got my reasons for that. If you want, you can PM me about it. But I don't have absolutely nothing to do with those events, and neither does Anna Karen. Yeah, so the actor who played the kid actor that played Oliver Norton in the film is Adam Rhodes, as I say. He did act for a few years after. He was in a TV series. I think it was like one of those Children's Film Foundation series, and I think it was called the Boy with Two Heads. He had a part in that. So he did act for a few years after Holiday on the Buses, but only up until sort of like he was maybe about 10 or something like that. Never took it on an adult life. It's not for everybody acting, obviously, you know what I mean? And then went on to be an airline pilot when he got older. That's what he is now. baby and mutiny on the buses was Wayne Westphal. He was at our event in Boreham Wood, I think the last one we done down there before the pandemic hit us. He attended our event in 2019. No, he never went on to be an actor. He went on to do, I think he done a baked beans advert at the lottery a year or so after it, around that time it might have been. Maybe that's why he got the part in the film actually, and that was it for them in terms of acting credits for Wayne Westphal. Yeah, here styles change, don't they? I mean, it's the same within the early series. I think it's like series one. His hair's very sort of like flat. It's quite a little bit shorter cut as well. So his hairstyles didn't change. Reg's didn't really. He stuck with the same sort of like hairstyle throughout, really. Yeah, yeah, she does. Yeah, she does still live in Essex, and she's now. I believe she's 84 now, is Anna. So keep your questions coming. Got half an hour to one here. So you got any questions? Just keep them coming, posting them up, and I'll answer them as soon as I see them on the screen. Yeah, I wouldn't say that he did really. I mean, not that I know of, anyway. The main cast, Harvey, stayed in the Beaches Hotel. It was the Beaches now. I'm not sure. It may very well have been called something different. It's like on the coast at Prestatyn, right behind the holiday camp. There's a big hotel there. I'm not too sure if it's always been called the Beaches Hotel or whether it had another name just before that. But that's where all the main cast stayed. The lesser cast, the supporting cast and crew, all would have been stayed in a block of chalets in an area that they filmed at in the holiday camp. So the lesser cast would have been in chalets. The main cast would have all stayed up in the more upmarket hotel, the Beaches Hotel. Yeah, Lewis, Holiday on the Buses was filmed. Obviously, there were one or two scenes filmed at Boreham Wood, when you see them obviously outside the Butler House and all of that. And when you see the motorbike getting pushed, that's actually on Barnet Lane, just on the southwest corner of Boreham Wood, not near Wales like you might think. But apart from that, the rest of it was up in Prestatyn and Rill and nearby Deserf, where the waterfall and shop is, and Stop and Rhuddlan. And St Asaph as well, although it leads down to St Asaph, they filmed on there quite a bit. But they also filmed, don't get be mistaken, the chalet scenes were not filmed at the holiday camp. The chalet scenes were all filmed back at Elstree Studios. The scene where you see Olive wandering through the holiday camp, where you think it is, going down a corridor, that was in Elstree Studios as well. That Paul, the main cast didn't stay in the camp. The main cast stayed up in the Beaches Hotel. The lesser cast, who obviously had smaller parts, they would have stayed in the camp, but not the main cast. They all stayed up in the beaches. They probably played something similar to Gedge was the best player in the lot. He was top of the pile. And he was probably coming in with the sort of money that maybe Sid was for Callum films. So maybe around about £5,000 a film or something like that. Lesser cast, the rest of the main cast would have been just a little bit under that, maybe £3,000 for a film. Which in those days was a good bit of money. You could do a heck of a lot with that sort of money for what was only a month's filming, if you see what I mean. So in theory, it was like £5,000 for a month, which is in today's money, it's like it's still a very good payment. And you're talking about 40 odd years ago, nearly 50 years ago now, nearly. I think they done 2 weeks up there, 3 weeks up there, and then a couple of weeks back at the studios filming. Why did they change the actress for Mum? It wasn't what we'd really say change. So to say that's not really true, because they always wanted Donna Sayre to play the mum. Donna Sayre was always the first choice to play the mum. If she hadn't been available for Series 1, she would have always been the mum. So they had to get another actress in to play, because Doris was going to be out of the country. She was manager phrenologist, who was a specialist in head injuries and all of that. They were attending a seminar in Mexico, I do believe it was, somewhere like that. And they were going to be out of the country at the time that the filming started. Filming dates couldn't be changed, so they needed to get in another actress to play the part of Mum, which was essentially Courtnidge. Now, obviously, it was only one series they were all signed up for. They never knew it was going to be a success. It could have been binned after Series 1, and that would have been the end of it. But thankfully, it pulled in a good amount of viewers. A second series was commissioned, and by that time, Donna Sayre was available, and Donna Sayre was brought in from there onwards. It was up on the hillside in Prestatyn, so it was maybe about a couple of miles away from the holiday camp. There was an actual house there. But they were still very scant with their money, Harvey. if you see what I mean. So they weren't ones for throwing the money around, if you see what I mean. Hammer, they done everything on an absolute shoestring budget, a bit like your Carry On films were exactly the same, if you see what I mean. They were all financially strapped, and they did very closely come out, nearly go out of business in the late 1970s, if you see what I mean. So, all right, they were box office smashes, but don't forget they also had their big losses. The reason why they canned doing spin-off films, Hammer, was because they had two stinkers that were real flops at the box office, if you see what I mean. So not everything was hits, if you know what I mean. They had some stinking flops that they lost a lot of money on at the box office. So they couldn't go throwing away 10 grand, 20 grand to an actor, if you see what I mean, for on the buses film, if you see what I mean. They did still need to have a keep a tight rein on the budget, if you see what I mean. The stinkers were Man at the Top, which wasn't, it was more of a drama than a spin-off comedy. And I'm not sure, the other one might have been was it Not Now, Darling? I'm not too sure if that was it. I would need to run a Google on it now. I know that flopped at the box office as well. That was around about the time of just after the first On the Buses film. Don't think it's that though. I'll have a check and see. That was 1973. Not Now, Darling. Actually, I had Saisley Coatnage in it. I don't think that was a Hammer film though. It was something else. It was something similar to that, or it could have been That's Your Funeral, maybe. I'll have to check on That's Your Funeral. But I know Man at the Top was one of them. It was a real stinker at the box office and really flopped. That was a Hammer film. So it could have been That's Your Funeral that was a flop at the box office. Well, that wasn't made at Pinewood, but it was still a Hammer production. So it could have been that and Man at the Top. Which was 1972. That's Your Funeral. So there would have been the two, I think. No, it wasn't. Never mind the quality. Gwendolyn Watts passed away, I do believe, around about the turn of the century, the new millennium, around about 1998 or 2000 or something like that, sadly. Yeah, so I think that was the two films that then were real flops, and probably other ones as well. Well, horror films weren't all sort of like brilliant box office smashes. What annoys me is a lot of your Hammer fans are a bit, you could call them snobs because they look down their noses at the On the Buses films and call them rubbish and all of that. But they kept Hammer afloat and kept them churning out all the horror films for them for perhaps a few more years, if you see what I mean. So it's all very well them not maybe rating them, maybe because they're connoisseurs of horror films, and they thought, oh, that could be a horror film instead of a comedy film getting made. But what they don't realise is the amount of good that they've done for the company of Hammer, if you see what I mean. Yeah, as I said, Gerald, it was always going to be Dorothea for the part, Reg Varney wanted her for the part. The two writers wanted her for the part. So that was all set in stone. But when Stuart Allen went and visited her at her Putney Bridge flat, she had to turn it down because she was going to be out of the country. If you see what I mean. So they had to look elsewhere. They came up with Sykes-Picot Courtnage for the standard for the first series. No, I'm talking about amongst the fans, Harvey. Amongst the fans, it definitely is. If you go on your Hammer groups and all of that, a lot of them will be telling you how rubbish the on the buses phones are. That is what they'll tell you. They'll tell you, they're blue in the face about how rubbish on the buses phones are. But whether it's snobbery or whether you've got another word for it, but that is a fact. You go and dig around amongst Hammer fans, Hammer like horror film fans, then they look down their noses at the on the buses films. That's unavoidable. I've been on lots of Hammer groups, and anytime you mention the on the buses films, it's like, you know, you see what I'm saying. So there's definitely something there. I don't know whether you want to call it snobbery or call it something else. If you see what I mean. I've got nothing against Hammer because obviously, yeah, it's great that they've done the films and all of that, but I'm not saying that it's Hammer that have the snobbery. It's more from your connoisseurs, your Hammer fans of today that look back on it and look down their noses at the On the Buses films without really realising that those films probably kept Hammer solvent until the time that they were very close to going out of business in the late 70s. Yeah, but that's the way that they are, though, Harvey, if you see what I mean. I mean, if you go around, dig around on some of their Hammer sites and just go on there and mention on the buses films, and the amount of people will jump on you and say, load of rubbish, garbage, should never have been made, is unbelievable. That's not to denigrate Hammer in any way, because Hammer very nearly went bust, if you know what I mean, in the late 70s. The only thing that kept them afloat was when Roy Skeggs and what's his name, somebody Lawrence, they decided to branch out in the TV and done the Hammer House of Horror, which was a great move because it kept the company going. Obviously, they did go bust a few years way after that, if you see what I mean. But certainly, the success of the On the Buses films helped a great deal in keeping them going as long as what they did, if you see what I mean, Harvey. But if you mention that to your connoisseurs, your Hammer fans that go on to Facebook groups and all of that, just go on to one of them and mention On the Buses films, and I lay a bet you won't get any sort of like palpable, decent feedback. It'll all be, oh, a load of rubbish, should never have been made and all of that, which I don't really understand, really, but there you go, that's one brand of type of fans for you, then. Don't want to tarnish them all with the same brush because they're maybe not all like that, if you see what I mean. That was taken in at the 2017 holiday, the official Holiday on the Buses class reunion event. That was taken. So keep the questions coming in. Yeah, I don't mind the Man About the House film. That was quite a decent film. But again, a lot of people don't really like that. Even from non-Hammer fans, just comedy fans, they will say that they thought it was a lot of rubbish. But I don't know. I quite like the Man About the House film. I'm quite partial to that. Mind you, I do like Man About the House anyway. If you see what I mean, but I don't think in any way it was detrimental to the TV series. If you see what I mean, I thought it was a very good effort. Well, I think a lot of people will probably cut me out and leave and I carry on, if you see what I mean. So, whether they would just rather have one of Anna than with me on it as well, Paul. Well, that was just that we did the writers that came up with the name for it. Uh, Definitely the writers. I mean, obviously that's what it's set on, so it's quite self-explanatory. The name, doesn't it? Really, sort of like tells you straight away what the subject matter of it is all about, basically. So writers are often very good at picking titles for things, like if you see what I mean. So keep your questions coming in. Wasn't all that keen on nearest and dearest, to be honest, but there you go. Everyone's own choices, I suppose, really. There are a heck of a lot of the what do we call it? The other comedy films of the 70s. A lot of them are filmed in Bournemouth as well, like Lies and Damn. Get a slide shot and he goes in to buy his dirty magazine. That shop's actually on Shenley Road in Bournemouth, right across the road from the studios. And also in the Likely Lads, a few of the scenes in the Likely Lads film in 1976 are filmed in Bournemouth. I think you see the bit where he's driving his van around the roundabout and he's in the van that he's selling the cleaning products out of. And you can see when it's going around the roundabout, you see the studios, LC studios in the background. And I think he pulls into like a housing estate, that's Bournemouth as well. So, and I know like the George and Mildred film, the Ropers and the 4 Miles House, that's in Bournemouth as well. So quite a bit of other stuff is filmed there as well in Bournemouth. Bob Butler, that was the name of the person that named the Mutiny film. They got to move it. They got to go to the studios and meet the cast and all of that. I think they attended the premiere of the film. Special screening, that's what it was at the studios, where they got to meet all the cast. And obviously at the studios, they've got their own little theatre where they can screen it and they got to sit there with the cast and watch the film then. And I think they got all the autographs and such like. Yeah, some features, original features, do still remain after all this time. The biggest one with the least changes, obviously, it's got to be the laundrette that features in the series 2 episode Family Feud, because it's still a laundrette, and the window frontage and the layout on inside it is absolutely identical to as it was in the in the 1960s when they filmed it in '69. So I'll be online for another few minutes, so hurry up and get your last minute questions in, and I'll answer them for you as soon as I see them on the screen. And I'll be calling it night at 8:30 tonight, so you've got 7 minutes, and I'll get you answering your questions as soon as I see them. Been on since just after 6, so I've been on for about 2.5 hours. So there was Harvey. Be surprised if there wasn't, if you see what I mean. Because they used to do it for the TV series as well. They used to have a sort of like end of series party, so I'm sure they would have done it for the films as well. Yeah, Michael shared that as Mr. Bronson. I think he's. I think he was like. I think he played Hitler. I think a couple of times. I think that is one of his claims to fame. I'm sure he played a Hitler in a couple of films. So, any questions? Last questions? Okay, Nicholas, thanks for popping in. Right, people are heading off now, so I think if you've got, hurry up and get your questions in. 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he played Hitler in a couple of films, Harvey. Well, you've only got 2 minutes to get your question in because I'm going off at 8:30, Limey. So if you quickly fire in some questions, I'll answer them for you before I go. There's about another couple of minutes to go yet. Just I've got them. I'm waiting on an important telephone call shortly, so I've got to cut it off at 8:30. I'll go and have myself something to drink, and I should have that telephone call. Yeah, cheers, Paul. I don't know when the next one will be. Give it a thought when the next one will be. Yeah, it's good to dip into things like that. Have a look at the Thai Food Tea one, because not the Thai Food, the PG Tips ones. Because then the Michael Robbins does voiceovers and some of those ones. I think the one where the piano's on his foot, he does the with the chimps in it. He does the voiceovers for those adverts. Does Michael Robbins? Well, you could say Dudley Foster. That's the only one that I could think of just now off the top of my head. It would be Dudley Foster, because he was originally offered the part of Inspector Blake and he turned it down. So Dudley Foster, well, they never heard back from. They sent him over the scripts to look at, and they never heard back from him at all. So I suppose you could say that was turning it down, obviously. So that would be Dudley Foster is the one that springs to mind there, Limey. I'm not too sure. I think a couple of years after that, I think he passed away. I think he committed suicide. Right, so I hope everyone's enjoyed it tonight. I might be back on maybe not too distant in the future, maybe about a couple of weeks or something like that. I'll see how this goes down with people, but I hope you've all enjoyed it tonight. Hope I've managed to answer all your questions. Put your thinking caps on and come back next time with more questions, and I'll answer them as best I can then as well. Okay, so say good night for now. Thanks to everyone for popping in. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. Hope you enjoyed it.